Is this working? Or?
I think you can hold that.
I'll hold that. Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Yulia. Thank you, Creative Mornings. Thanks to everyone for coming here today. This is a great attendance we have here, and I'm very excited to speak today. By the way, this picture was taken before I moved to Florida. I don't wear ties anymore, so. But I moved here actually to West Palm Beach 2 years ago. I've been a New Yorker my whole life. I was born in New York and lived in New York for the last 20, 25 years. And in 2011, one of my partners asked me to come down here to develop a hotel, which is now the Hilton West Palm. And he said, hey, we won this RFP for a hotel in West Palm Beach. Can you deal with it? You're a hotel guy. So I said, sure, I'll come to West Palm. I'd only been to Miami. And lo and behold, 2011 turned to 2014 very quickly. We started construction and then opened that asset in January of 2016. So it's been open 2.5 years and had a great experience there. And while I was building that hotel, ended up doing a deal with Restoration Hardware to open, which we opened in November, the Restoration Hardware Gallery store on Okeechobee as part of the City Place district. And as I was finishing the hotel, my partner said, hey, we really think it would be a great idea for you to move down to West Palm and start a business platform in the Southeast based out of West Palm Beach. So my initial reaction was, I'm a New Yorker, why would I ever move to Florida? So I think there are a couple New Yorkers here who are transplants who we probably can joke about that idea. But it's been an amazing journey. I've built a really great team here on the ground and continue to build, and have spent the last 2 years reimagining City Place. And I'm gonna kind of walk through some of the themes and principles there. But I'm also very excited that we're all here in the Culture Lab, because about 2 years ago, when I started a discussion with Macy's about buying the site back, which is a blessing in disguise, and I think ultimately this is a great development site for us in the heart of the downtown. I wanted to use this space as an inspirational creative space to bring people together with arts and culture at the core and the hub. So we're going to continue more installations here, but events just like this are exactly what we had in mind to really bring the creative community together. So I wanted to start off with a question to the audience, and as I was thinking about this notion of community and trying to think about how it ties into the work that I do, one of the things I realized is there are so many definitions out there of what community means. And community means so many different things to different individuals. So I'll just ask a few people in the crowd, what do you think when I ask the question, what is community? Anyone out there? Extended family. Extended family? A tribe, I like that. Belonging together. Belonging together. That's great. I mean, those are all great words. So the word community is derived from the Latin word communitas, meaning the same, which in turn is derived from communis, which means common, public, shared by all and many. And I think when you look at it and you think about kind of the traditional sense of the form of the word community, it was defined as a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. The more I thought about it, it's interesting how words and concepts change over time as we evolve. But I don't think of the word community as defining a geographic location. I think community transcends geographic location. It's not enough to say, I live in West Palm, so I'm part of this community. You can live anywhere in the world today and work on anything around the world, which is why it's an incredible world to live in, and I think more people are traveling and living in different locations and affecting different communities. But to actually be part of a community, there has to be a sense of belonging and a connection to working there. So I say, today, community is a group of people that care about each other and feel like they belong together. And this is a great example of community. Creative Mornings has brought together a lot of people here today who all care about creativity and learning from each other, right? This is a great example of what community is. So I put together this visual, again, in thinking about the idea and the notion of community, that there's this overlap of a sense of home, a sense of belonging, and a sense of family, right? I mean, those are three elements I think that are very important to community. But at the heart of it all, it's about shared experiences, right? We, as a community, want to share experiences with each other, and that's how we build community. So the other thing is, you probably are asking, why is it real estate developer? Why is it representative from related companies? we're a big corporate name. You know, the company was started quite a while back, but we're doing work all over the world now, and it's very exciting to have worked for the company for 14 years and now leading the office here. But why, as a developer, am I talking to you all about community, or why did I get asked to talk about community? And I think at the heart of it, you know, my manifesto, we talked about manifestos earlier, is really, you know, what my passion is about transforming urban life by creating connected communities that enhance and inspire the way we live, work, and play. And that's the heart of everything I do. You know, that's what gets me up in the morning. That's what my staff knows I talk about all day long, and it's really the heart of what inspires all the work that you've seen in the city and that you're going to continue to see in the city, and you'll see around the world from other partners that are doing work in our company as well. So hopefully everyone can see this, but you know, this is an aerial of City Place from almost 20 years ago. So the context is the year 2000 when the project opened, and I didn't have the benefit of actually working on the original project. I wasn't at the company at the time because it started in the mid-90s with my two partners, and I'm sure a lot of people in the crowd here were around when this happened, and how much of an incredible economic impact it had on the city here. But because I've only done ground-up projects, I really spent the last 2 years really trying to understand what this project meant for the community and how it affected this environment. And I was really fascinated to find out that when City Place opened in 2000, it was really the first of its kind lifestyle center in the country. When I say lifestyle center, it's a real estate terminology. Really, it was this idea of, hey, you know, the mall developers could take the idea of a mall, take the top off the mall, put them in these areas of density and public space, and create this new format of retail, entertainment, shopping, public space, and places for community to get together. And I was also fascinated that when it opened, it was such a huge success that the biggest developers in the country now, who own some of the most successful lifestyle centers in LA and Phoenix and all over the country, came here and studied this project. You know, actually, and I was speaking with Rafael Clemente, is not here today, but I was speaking to him yesterday, and you know, he's an incredible asset for our city as an urban planner. And I was also fascinated to hear from him that, you know, in the mid-90s, under the Nancy Graham regime, which she was the mayor at the time, who really kind of brought all this together, there was a very progressive set of urban planners that were here in West Palm Beach. You know, at the time in the small town of West Palm Beach, right? Kind of thinking about, hey, how do we affect urbanism, and how do we think progressively about becoming the city of the future, right? So it was very exciting to really kind of understand all that. Now, fast forward to 20 years later, and this is an aerial shot of you know, effectively the same area. And, you know, I like to say, when people ask me, you know, what do you think City Place really did? I like to say that it was an incredible economic engine for the city and a growth starter for what I think, you know, if we look at the next 20 years, is going to be a huge economic change here for many reasons. But on the south end of the project, as you know, I mean, the hotel and convention center, we now have a bustling hotel and convention center. We have an incredible restoration hardware gallery store, which, by the way, if you haven't been there for lunch or dinner, I would highly recommend it, because it's really a magical space. But just as important as on the south end, we know I have an anchor there, on the north end, we have the Bright Line train, which, if you haven't taken the Bright Line train, to me, it is the ultimate game changer for this city. I've probably taken it 20 times since it opened in Miami, and just the access and the connectivity to the big city from here and what that's going to do to the economy, I think is tremendous. And also bringing together communities now in an easier, safer, connected way is something that's interesting. And of course, north end, you have Clematis, which is the main east-west corridor that connects the city as well. So, you know, at the heart of what we've been doing, when I say reimagination of City Place and thinking about with partners and my team, is this notion that, you know, what was designed as a lifestyle center 20 years ago is now ready, and it's time to pivot into an exciting urban neighborhood. And, you know, at the heart of it all, you know, the principles, the pillars that are driving this reimagination, driving our creativity around it, are arts and culture, great public spaces, health and wellness, experiential retail, food and beverage, hospitality, and education. And again, you know, at the heart of all those topics is community, right? So, and I'll walk through some ideas here, but every single one of these topics has this notion of community, and I think more and more by the day that's becoming more important. So again, we're in the Culture Lab, and we talked a little bit about this, but you know, I wanted to play around with this idea when we acquired this site, and this is a great development site in the middle of the city. I wanted to play around with this idea that while the department store was the anchor 20 years ago, arts and culture is the new anchor today. And I thought that if we can create this space and have people come in and have people come into a free art experience the space, get inspired, and come up with ideas, that it could be sort of a melting pot of ideas for creatives around, and also be an inspirational place for us. I mean, I call it, a lot of things we do, I like to kind of use this terminology of place lab, in the sense that everything we do is experimental and trying to get our finger on the pulse of where we want to go with the project. So we're really excited about this. Michael Craig Martin, who's an incredible artist out of London, pop artist. I was fortunate enough to visit his studio earlier this year in London. Did his largest installation ever on the exterior. And then, we're layering in more installations down below, downstairs and around. Of course, we have local artists like Amy Gross in the corner, or Sarah Naus, who did these incredible flamingos, or Philip Estlin. And then on this floor, after this, we'll turn it on, Stephen Vitella, who's a world-renowned sound artist, and really kind of opened my eyes and ears, literally, to the notion that sound is art. I never really thought about that outside of music. He's done this really big installation, 3-piece installation here, and then of course Jennifer Steinkamp in the old departments, the old jewelry department, has done a piece called Cultured, which are these beautiful pearls, and then Willie Cole. That piece in the right corner downstairs are actually women's shoes that he's used in the old shoe department downstairs. So we wanted to kind of really inspire artists and get people to get creative with us about how do you repurpose this space, how do you think about the new world, and how does all this inspiration tie into the future of this downtown and this location. And of course we have Jedi Loci, which is a road tattoo we did with Steve Taylor. Some of you guys might be familiar with this, but Steve Taylor is a world-renowned artist based in New York, who does what he calls road tattoos. And he thinks of the road as the skin of the community, and he came up with this piece called Jedi Loci, which in Roman religion means the protective spirits of a place. And his whole idea was, we can use the street as a mural, and he invites the community and the local artists, the Dreyfus School kids actually help participate in this, to actually paint the piece. And this is about 1.2 miles long, and it connects from Okeechobee on Rosemary all the way down to the historic Northwest, and ends right by the Sunset Lounge, which the city is working on a restoration of. And it's really a great piece. I mean, the initial piece, you can kind of see it here, is a Celtic weave that represents community, and then there's local flora from the area, and then as it gets closer to the Sunset Lounge, he's taken the jazz standard around midnight and taken the musical notes as it gets closer to the jazz. So it's really been a great piece, and a piece that has brought the community together. And then of course, as we're re-merchandising quite a bit of retail space and quite a bit of food and beverage space here, and that's all very exciting, because there's a whole new world in that category that we spend a lot of time with CEOs from all over the world and great restaurateurs. We wanted to engage the community in some of the empty spaces we had, and this has been a huge success. We're working with groups like Urban Youth Impact. We did a pop-up with them, and we're going to do another one with them this season. And then Armory Arts Center, which, if you haven't been, again, is a great facility in Grandview Heights that's sort of hidden in that neighborhood, and we were interested in bringing them in to do an Armory Arts experience concept, so that the community can learn more about what they do and also engage more in more craft. And we like the idea of craft as experience. More pictures. And there's the Shack, by the way, which we all love, Field of Greens. Thank you very much, Hess, for providing food and beverage today. So another topic that has become near and dear to my heart is urban planning and affecting the urban landscape through public space. And I've actually learned a lot about this over the last couple of years, because I realized as part of this reimagination, one of the things that we need to really think about is places for people, and how we create those environments, make them comfortable, make them inspirational, and think about how people are going to come and spend long periods of time in this district, in this area. And I love this quote. Jeanette Siddiq Khan is the former Department of Transportation commissioner under the Bloomberg era. She's become a bit of a superstar after that, because she started the City Bike program, which is the shared bike program in New York, which is hugely successful. I think 15,000 plus bikes now in New York City. And then more importantly, she took 180 acres of land of roadway and gave it back to the public through creating cycling lanes and public parks and public spaces. And if you've been to New York recently, and I grew up there and I've lived there, I mean, it was transformational. What she did on Broadway, she was involved in the High Line, and just adding green space to what was predominantly a very concrete jungle kind of place. So she says streets are some of the most important, most ubiquitous and valuable public spaces the city has. If you can change the street, you can change the world. So speaking of streets, Rosemary Avenue is highlighted here. And Rosemary Avenue, we feel, is the premier north-south corridor access of the city. It connects the hotel and the convention center restoration, the south end of the city and of the downtown, all the way north to the Bright Line, to Clematis, and then to the historic Northwest. So we want to celebrate Rosemary, and we were thinking a lot about what's going to inspire us to reimagine Rosemary Avenue. So we got inspired by these beautiful trellises around the world. Trellises are not only act as a form of shade, they're also architectural elements that can affect design, which we spend a lot of time on design. And one of the things I actually love about living in South Florida is it's so green everywhere at all times. It's quite wild. I can go in my backyard and see green everywhere, and it's just this really great thing coming from a place from New York, because you don't see as much of it. But we love this idea from an authenticity standpoint that it's very authentic in Florida for green to grow rapidly and up buildings and through trellises. So we love this idea of kind of using the green to affect the architecture. We came up with this terminology, urban lush, that we can use green to affect architecture and affect environment and place and create more interesting spaces. And then, again, we're in the process of reimagining Rosemary, and then all the public spaces, including the plazas and all the streetscape around. We also got inspired by this idea of the green beach. And that's the High Line on the right side. For those of you who haven't been there, it's really worth checking out because it's been a phenomenon in New York City. But creating green areas for people to hang out, read a book, spend time, and enjoy the center of the city, instead of the more concrete type environments that we have in downtowns. And we love this idea of doing large events. We're playing around with this idea of going curbless on the street and curbless on the plaza, so that when we shut down, we have the ability of expanding flexibly our plaza space as well, to do markets as well. So this rendering is a pretty recent rendering, which is a reimagination of Rosemary Avenue, where we're planning on going curbless on the streets, adding some trellising from an architectural standpoint and also a shade standpoint, driving that notion of urban lush up the buildings, right? Toning the paint colors down, because I'm not sure if that whole Mediterranean multiple color look is the right look for today. And what this does is, you can see, it de-emphasizes the car and emphasizes the pedestrian and the cyclist. And magical things happen when you do things like this, and I've seen it happen in other cities, and I think we're very focused on how is this going to really affect our environment and then allow us to work with the community on these spaces. So very, very exciting. Again, another part of what we do in a big way is we're in the retail business. I'm sure many of you have read articles about the death of retail. We read about it every day, that the mall is dying, that the department store is dead, that no one's shopping anymore. None of it's really true, actually, because retail sales are going up. But what's happened is the way people shop and the way people interact has totally transformed and totally changed. So there's this notion of prioritizing experiences over transactions, in the sense that if you're a retailer today and you're not thinking about what experience is in your space, there's no way you're going to capture the consumer to go buy online or to connect with your brand. Gary Friedman, who's the CEO of Restoration Hardware, said something that really resonated with me once when he was building this very expensive gallery in the middle of the highway. And I said, how does this work? The investment is just tremendous in this. And he said, well, this is the best investment I make, because, and oh, by the way, I don't care if someone comes in here 100 times and doesn't buy a couch from me, right? He said, if they keep coming in, I'm emotionally connecting with them and they're connecting to my brand. And what happens in that 100th time when they decide they want to buy a couch and they're going to come to Restoration Hardware, or they're going to go online, or they're going to tie into that brand. So I actually think now, from talking to some of the biggest CEOs in the world, that in the retail world, who are being progressive and investing heavily in consumer experience, that the greatest day for the consumer is on its way. And in a very big way, it involves community. And if the retailers can't capture the community, they're not going to win. They're not going to be able to sell product, right? So I wanted to use a few examples of retailers who are doing this right, and I couldn't help but use Apple, which is the most valuable company in the world, as we all know. I think it just went over the trillion dollar mark, which is the first one for, I think, all of us in the room. And so Apple's Angela Ahrens has the goal of using stores to educate, inspire, entertainment, and enrich communities, and this is their manifesto. This is the new store in Milan, which I'm dying to get to, which they took a public plaza in the middle of Milan and transformed it into a space which she says Apple stores to play a bigger role in local communities, and stores are now called town squares. So not only is the store blurring the lines of, hey, this is a place to go buy an iPhone, right? I mean, it's a public space, it's an inspiration space, it's an arts and culture space, but most importantly, it's an educational space. It's a place where people come in to learn about their product, and they want to learn and they want to teach and inspire people, right? So this is very interesting, the direction that they've gone in. This is another one, Lululemon, which I think is probably one of the more successful brands in bricks and mortar retail today. The former CEO said, Christine Day, that the number one goal is really building healthy communities. So you can see yoga class in the store. Wellness is big now, but they focus majority of their efforts on building community, having brand ambassadors in markets, and really thinking about, hey, how are we going to have that tight-knit loop with the community? Because if we do that, we're going to sell a lot of yoga pants, right? I mean, they understand that, right? And then, of course, Nike, which is a brand I love as a runner, does a lot around community. I mean, this is the Nike Running Club, and I love this quote that I found by someone in the club who said, when we come together, we're given the opportunity to become the most elite versions of ourselves. We carry each other, right? So there's that notion of we're stronger in groups. We can do more in groups. In fact, we can do things in groups that we couldn't imagine we could do individually, right? So there's this power of the brand driving that connection to community that really drives and inspires people. And then this is another one that I love that I learned about recently. This is a brand called Rapha, R-A-P-H-A, and they have about 25 of these. They call them clubhouses around the world. Started by a guy in the UK. His name is Simon Mottram. I think he's one of the more smart people that I've listened to and heard. His goal in life is to make cycling the most popular sport in the world, and that's his manifesto, and that's why he's doing what he's doing. And Rapha is, for those of the cyclists around here, it's a very high-end cycling apparel gear, right? And there's a cool factor to it, and there's a reason why they charge what they charge, because there's sort of an idea of it's hard to get and this and that. But the most important thing about what they do is they build these clubhouses, right, which are community hubs for cyclists, right? So you can go in the one in New York, which is the only one I've been in, and you can go and have a coffee, you can hang out with your cycling buddies, you can watch cycling races, you can buy gear, you can talk about biking, you can dock your bike. If you have a membership, you can anywhere there's a Rapha, you can rent a road bike anywhere in the world. So they're thinking about these as community hubs that have a network around the world that tie in that community of cycling and make it an easy sport to be able to access anywhere you go in the world, which I think is fascinating. So another component, which I had mentioned earlier, is food and beverage, something near and dear to my heart. Before I came to West Palm, I built a big project in Las Vegas, and I learned about food. I cut my teeth on food. I did 9-star chef restaurants in one asset with some of the biggest chefs in the world, and it was a learning experience, but really an incredible creative experience, because what I realized is this notion that food brings community together, and this was years ago, 10 plus years ago, was starting to become something that's huge. And today, we all know you go to the food hall, or you go around, or you even go back to the original model of the European model. Communities organize and get around food experiences, and this is something that I think is huge today. This is a good friend of mine, Jose Andres, who I'd met in that previous world. He has done incredible things. He has a group called World Central Kitchen, and his goal in life is to use food to empower communities and strengthen economies. And he just won the Humanitarian Award of the Year from James Beard, and has fed, has created over 4 million meals to people in need in places of disaster, places like Haiti and Puerto Rico and this and that. And if you meet him, he's an incredibly energetic guy. We happen to be doing a big food hall with him in New York now, a Spanish food hall, but this is his number one passion. And this is what gets him up in the morning, and he loves this idea of being able to help and be able to think of food as something that empowers communities, and it's really fascinating. And then wellness, you may have heard we're working on a lot of wellness initiatives here, and we have an initiative that's been started called District Fit, which is bringing the fitness community together, using the hotel as a platform for yoga and other ideas, but creating adaptable and flexible outdoor areas where we can bring this notion of wellness into the DNA of what we're doing. And then lastly, I have this slide about social conscience. And this is something that I think is relatively recent in the world, because people, brands, communities are starting to realize what's ruining our environment and what we need to do differently. You know, I mean, there's everything from there's no reason to be using plastic and styrofoam anymore because we know it's not biodegradable, to thinking about water conservation, to thinking about the way that we have up top. There's a concept in Brooklyn called Brooklyn Grange, which is rooftop gardens, which act as CSAs, community spaces for the community in urban environments to be able to get their fruits and vegetables on a weekly basis and be able to do sustainable things. And we're going to be tying this in a big way to our chef collection that we're going to introduce upcoming soon. And it's something that's become very important is, you know, how do we think about the environment and how do we build responsibly and think about energy conservation and water preservation and the future of where cities are going. So that's my presentation. I just wanted to, again, thank everyone for having me here today. And this is a very inspirational time here for the city.